Have you ever had the person you trusted most humiliate you in front of everyone you know? I did. And I didn't just feel embarrassed, I felt my entire life split into two, before and after. It happened during what should have been the proudest moment of my career, in a room filled with my colleagues, my mentors, and the very person I thought was going to marry me. But before we continue, please subscribe and turn on the notification bell for updates. I'm Clara Mitchell, 29, a marketing executive who had just been promoted to senior VP at one of the fastest-growing companies in the city. I had worked 6 years for that moment, late nights, weekend campaigns, hundreds of strategy meetings, and countless times convincing myself it was all worth it. Today was supposed to be the day I finally got to stand in front of the company and announce my next big project, a promotion that was months in the making. The stage was set, the room buzzing with energy, everyone waiting for me to speak. I felt proud, nervous, excited, a combination that made my pulse race. And then Ethan, my fiancé of 3 years, 32, suave, always in control, somehow slipped his hand into the mix. We had shared so many happy memories, the rooftop proposal, the late-night pizza conversations, the whispered I love yous that felt infinite. I had pictured this day 1,000 times. Me delivering my speech, him clapping proudly, everyone cheering us on as the perfect couple. But life has a cruel way of rewriting scripts when you least expect it. The room was packed, cameras on, everyone's eyes glued to the stage. I cleared my throat and started my speech. And then, before I could get past my opening line, Ethan grabbed the microphone. The words he said stopped my heart, froze the room, and shattered everything I thought I knew about him. We're done. I don't want to marry you. The silence was deafening. People froze mid-clap, jaws dropped, eyes wide. I felt time slow, like the world had taken a collective breath and forgotten to exhale. I could hear my own heartbeat, loud and fast, echoing in my ears. What do you do in a moment like that? Do you scream, cry, run, or just stand there like a statue as your life collapses around you? And yet, somehow I smiled. I reached for the ring on my finger, the symbol of a promise he was casually tossing aside, and I handed it back. Thank you, I said softly, as if I were returning a library book. Then, I turned back to the audience, cleared my throat again, and continued my speech as though nothing had happened. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. I could feel the eyes of over 200 people on me, their attention split between my promotion and him. Ethan, my fiancé, standing casually to the side, like he hadn't just dropped a bomb that made the room go completely silent. The moment I realized he was serious, my stomach flipped. My hands shook slightly on the podium. I thought about all the mornings I dragged myself out of bed before sunrise, all the nights I sacrificed sleep to finish presentations, all the pitches I gave while pretending everything was under control. None of that mattered right now because the person I trusted most had decided, in front of everyone, that it didn't. I remember thinking, this can't be happening. Not here. Not now. My promotion speech had been the thing I'd been preparing for over months, the culmination of years of effort. Every line, every anecdote, every carefully crafted joke had been rehearsed to perfection. I had imagined the applause, the nods of approval, the small smiles from the CEO, Margaret Lynn. I never imagined my engagement being canceled mid-sentence, while my heart pounded louder than the clapping I should have been receiving. The room froze. Colleagues shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Some whispered, others stared, unsure whether to intervene or just watch. I could see Margaret Lynn's sharp eyes narrowing, silently measuring how I would react. And Ethan, he looked smug, like he was proud of himself for shocking everyone. The audacity. The cruelty. I had spent years thinking I knew him. I thought I could read him like a book. And now that illusion lay in pieces on the polished wooden floor of the auditorium. But then, something strange happened. Instead of panic, instead of tears, I felt a spark of clarity. I looked down at the ring on my finger, then back at the audience, and realized this was my moment. Not his. I could let him ruin it, or I could reclaim it, right here, in front of everyone who thought they knew me. And that's when I did the unexpected. I smiled. Not a bitter smile, not a nervous one, but a deliberate, confident smile. I handed him the ring. "Thank you," I said, my voice steady. He looked stunned, his smugness fading into confusion. And then I turned back to the podium, cleared my throat, and picked up where I left off, ignoring the gasps and whispers that followed. People stopped clapping. They stared. Some shook their heads in disbelief. But I didn't care. Because in that moment, I realized something crucial. Life doesn't always go according to plan, and betrayal often shows up when you least expect it. But strength? Strength is something you decide to own in the exact instant when it seems impossible. And as I began speaking again, I felt the tension shift slightly, curiosity replacing shock. The room leaned in. They wanted to know how the story would end. And that's when I remembered why I wasn't done yet. But what came next would test everything I thought I knew about control, courage, and the power of one sentence. I could feel every eye in the room trying to decide if I was going to crumble or fight back. The silence after Ethan's words was deafening, but I refused to let it define me. For a brief moment, I imagined collapsing, dropping to the floor, letting the embarrassment consume me. But then I remembered all the nights I'd spent alone in my apartment, perfecting pitches while the city slept. I remembered the promotions I'd earned, the respect I'd fought for, and the belief that my worth was never meant to be dictated by someone else, even someone I loved. So I took a deep breath and lifted my chin. I straightened the papers on the podium, glanced at the audience, and continued. At first, my words felt mechanical, almost hollow. But as I spoke about teamwork, deadlines, and the projects that had defined my journey, I noticed something remarkable. The room leaned in. People who had been frozen in shock now had their eyes locked on me, waiting. Not on Ethan, but on me. And for the first time since he'd ruined my moment, I felt a flicker of power control. I could almost hear the whispers in the back row, colleagues exchanging glances, trying to figure out what I was thinking, how I could possibly keep going. And that's when I realized the truth. This moment wasn't about him at all. It was about me. About proving, in front of everyone, that no one, no betrayal, no humiliation, could steal my voice, my dignity, my achievement. I began weaving subtle humor into my speech, recounting small wins, little office anecdotes, all while maintaining a serene composure that seemed impossible given what had just happened. Inside, I felt a rush of ironic satisfaction. Here was Ethan, the man who thought he could define me, standing there mute, while the room watched me shine. I even caught a few smirks from colleagues who had quietly suspected he wasn't as supportive as he appeared. And as I approached the end of my planned speech, I paused, letting the tension hang. The audience didn't know it yet, but I was preparing to deliver something they would never forget. I could feel the energy in the room shift, the anticipation building, because people instinctively sense when someone is about to defy expectation. And then, with all eyes on me, I dropped a line that hinted at a revelation yet to come. Sometimes, I said, my voice steady and deliberate, the moments that feel like disasters are actually the ones that define us the most. The room hung on my words, and I could see the curiosity crackling in the air. Even Ethan's smug confidence faltered, replaced by a flicker of uncertainty. But the truth, the reason I was truly unshakable, was still waiting for the right moment to be revealed. And when it came, no one in that room would see it coming. The room stopped breathing. Every eye was on me. Ethan's smug confidence had completely evaporated, replaced by confusion, maybe even fear. I could feel the electricity in the air, the collective tension of over 200 people waiting for me to crumble, or to say something that would somehow confirm the disaster they all assumed had just happened. But I wasn't going to crumble. Not today. Not in front of them. Not in front of him. I remembered something my mentor once told me. Your dignity is louder than anyone else's betrayal. It was a mantra I had clung to over the years, a reminder that no one gets to dictate my worth, not a boss, not a colleague, and certainly not a fiancé who had chosen to humiliate me publicly. I could feel my hands steady on the podium. My heartbeat, which had threatened to betray me moments ago, slowed just enough for clarity to set in. I had one sentence left. The one sentence that could reclaim this entire moment. And I knew, deep down, it would change everything. I looked around the room, meeting the eyes of colleagues I'd worked alongside for years. Some were shocked, some impressed, others still trying to process what had happened. But the room had shifted. They weren't just watching me, they were waiting for me to define the moment, to decide how this story would end. And in that instant, I knew. I didn't need to justify, explain, or beg for empathy. I only needed to speak the truth, calmly, firmly, without hesitation. So I did. "If you're done with me," I said, my voice carrying clearly across the hall, "then I'm done being defined by anyone but myself." The silence that followed was heavy, almost tangible, but it wasn't the same stunned silence as before. This one was different. It was filled with recognition, awe, even admiration. Slowly, the room erupted into applause, then cheers, and finally a standing ovation. Ethan, for the first time that day, looked like he had no idea how to respond. His plan to humiliate me publicly had backfired spectacularly. I finished my speech, walked off the stage with my head high, and felt a rush of liberation that I had never imagined possible. People came up to congratulate me, some even tearing up, sharing how powerful it was to witness someone reclaim their moment so flawlessly. I realized, in that instant, that life doesn't always go according to the plan we imagine, but sometimes, the disruption is exactly what allows us to shine brighter than we ever thought we could. And as I looked back at Ethan disappearing into the crowd, I knew one thing for certain. Some stories end in heartbreak, yes, but mine ended with power, pride, and a single sentence that no one would ever forget. Looking back, it's hard to believe that one moment could feel like the end of the world. And yet, somehow, it wasn't. I stood on that stage, heart racing, having just been humiliated by the person I loved most, and yet I felt stronger than I ever had. The very thing meant to break me, Ethan's public rejection, ended up highlighting something far more important: my own strength. Sometimes life forces you to choose between letting someone else define your story or taking the pen back yourself. That day, I chose the latter. The applause from my colleagues, the nods from my mentors, even the stunned silence from Ethan, these were reminders that resilience is visible. It radiates. And the truth is, public humiliation has a strange power. It gives you a stage, whether you want it or not. And if you can harness that moment, if you can take control instead of letting fear dictate your actions, you can turn even betrayal into triumph. I didn't just finish my speech that day. I transformed it into a declaration of independence, a testament to my own worth. I remember walking out of that town hall and feeling something I hadn't expected: relief. Not just because I had survived a nightmare, but because I had reclaimed my dignity in front of everyone who mattered. I had learned that no achievement, no promotion, no applause is truly meaningful if you let someone else's actions undermine your confidence. That one sentence I spoke wasn't just words. It was a boundary, a statement of self-respect, a way of saying that my life and my story belong to me, and me alone. So I want you to ask yourself this: how often do we let others, friends, lovers, colleagues, decide what we're worth? How often do we stay silent in the face of betrayal or humiliation, hoping it will pass unnoticed? What if, instead, we chose to stand tall, even when the world is watching? That day, I realized that real power isn't in controlling others. It's in controlling how you respond, how you carry yourself, and how you refuse to let anyone else write the ending of your story. And as for Ethan, he's part of the story, yes, but only as a reminder that not everyone deserves the chapter they imagine in your life. My story didn't end with heartbreak. It ended with empowerment, resilience, and the unforgettable echo of a single sentence that changed everything. Some people leave your life thinking they've broken you. And some moments, as painful as they feel, give you the opportunity to become stronger than you ever imagined. So here's my parting thought: your worth isn't up for debate, your dignity isn't negotiable, and sometimes one sentence, uttered at the right moment, can change everything. What would your sentence be?